know how there's those websites out there that have been around for a very long time? The instant you go to them, you know that you just see that they're 20 years old or 15 years old or something. And you just know that the person behind it is really struggling with their sort of tech life or the tech part, I suppose you could say, of their life. And if we think about kind of modern day tech struggles or modern day non-technical people, you may have some that actually try to get themselves out of that hole or out of that technical rut, I'm going to call it, by vibe coding their way out of it with new AI tools like ChatGPT and Claude and other things. And then there begs the question, well, maybe their new vibe coded website or maybe their new vibe coded web app works really good, at least on the surface, and looks really good, at least on the surface, but aren't they still kind of in a technical rut because AI isn't perfect? Well, I have an interesting episode for you today. Today, we'll be playing the interview that I had with Nathaniel Rogers over the summer. He's a developer that has leaned hard into the sort of solutions architect angle of things as he helps his clients through their tech woes, from easy things like Calendly setups through more difficult web app development. And possibly most interestingly, he has maybe carved even a little market out for himself by tackling vibe-coded projects. Specifically, he is the tech that goes over them and makes sure that they work the way they should. So, if this sounds interesting to you and you want to support the show, you can go and check us out on that Patreon, leave a review or rating in your podcast app, join us in our Discord server, or share this with your friends. And if you want to help out not only yourself, but us as well, you can net yourself up to 20% off a Scrimba Pro plan. You can find that link in the show description and the show notes. Full details in the show notes on htmlallthethings.com. And remember that we are powered by Code Rabbit. They give you the power of AI code reviews to help cut your code review time in half. Check out the link in the show notes and episode description to net yourself a 14-day free trial. No credit card needed, and just a 2-click sign up with a GitHub or GitLab account. And now, without further ado, let's cut to this interview right now. All right, everybody, we have Nate on the line here. Before we jump into this loaded episode, Nate, what's going on? How did you find us? And what have you been working on?
Yeah, g'day guys. Thanks for having me. So I've been a long time listener of the podcast, been listening to it for maybe 7, 8 months, something like that. And I found it because I had a lot of downtime, but not a lot of time at the computer. And I was constantly thinking about computer things. And so I was like, maybe there's like a podcast or something in the tech industry where I can just like listen and hear, what's the latest in tech. And your guys' SEO was great, and you were at the top of the list. So I said, I'll give that a go. And since listening to that, I've really enjoyed the different topics, and you focus in, how does the intro go? We focus on web development, web design, and small business.
Yep.
And I do all three of those. I mean, I don't like design. I'm a back-end dev originally. But when I'm working with my small businesses, a lot of them don't have logos or like a brand established. And so you kind of learn what you have to do, especially these days in small business and in tech. It seems like you have to become a marketer, because it's impossible to be found if you don't know the marketing things. And so, yeah, it's been interesting. And yeah, I was listening to a podcast with Tom Barrasso talking about the feature phone.
Yep, that's right.
And yeah, I found that really, really interesting. So I actually reached out to Tom, and you guys, and that was kind of the turning point actually in my business, where I realized I don't have to just network with people in my local area. I can network on the web, meet all sorts of people in all sorts of industries. So I've spent maybe 10 hours a week in my business just on solely networking. So not looking for, clients that are gonna give me money, but finding people in the industry and in horizontals and that sort of thing to network with, to just kind of be in their awareness, And so when things come up and it's like, yeah, that's totally in Nate's wheelhouse, we'll send things to him. And we talk about like feeding each other leads and kickbacks from that and that sort of thing. So what do I do for a living? I work with small businesses. I live out in a country town in Australia. I actually have two horses out the back,
No, that's cool. Okay.
and five chickens out the front. So um, living the country dream, and I work with small businesses, mostly the non-techs. And by non-techs, I mean business owners that struggle to log into an admin portal. So I've I've grown up around technology, always been using computers. When I was two, my dad, he was a software developer, and he taught me how to like click and drag things into a folder, and he basically turned me into a bash script. He would write he would build logos, and my job was to like automatically put them in a folder and name them and stuff. And I was doing that when I was two, um, because I was just getting familiarized with computers. So I've been around them for a long time. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about the assumptions that I make, that people, especially in business, usually make, like what they're able to do, their abilities. And I've questioned all of those assumptions. And every single time I meet with clients, I find that those assumptions are ones that most businesses haven't made. And so, I mean, most businesses, right? Um, Statistically, I imagine most businesses have made those assumptions and have resources to fill those gaps. But I like to be one of those resources to fill those gaps for the businesses that haven't got tech involved. And so it could look like setting up like a Microsoft 365 account and teaching them how to use Word and Excel and all these things. Or we set up like a WordPress site with a complex CRM connected to their admin panel. It really, it's about the needs of the client and their budget. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I do in a nutshell.
That's cool though, because I mean, we see a lot of people, I mean, myself included with the web dev agency side of things, where we kind of niche down into just like, hey, we just, mostly do web development. But I mean, when you're dealing with small and even medium business clients, a lot of the time there's like a lot of bleed where, like you said, it's like, hey, let's start setting up your WordPress. And it's like, yeah, but we don't have a logo. We don't even have company colors or any sort of branding or brand identity at all. And it's like, okay, so you either they've been a business that's been around for a long time and it's just been solely word of mouth and that type of thing, and they're going online for the first time, or it's a brand new business and they, just immediately were like, well, I need a website. And I think you mentioned actually off air just before this that you were saying that you think that a website's about 5% of what a business
Yeah.
needs. Like, can you kind of dive
Yeah.
into that? Because that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, definitely. So what I've noticed is because my employment history is I've worked with in a bunch of different agencies. I did an app startup with the family back in 2011 when everyone wanted to build an app, um, and had a good lesson in marketing and advertising and how apps fail if you don't have that. And what I've learnt from kind of peeling back the curtain and being involved in these businesses is there's always a marketing department, there's always an advertising side, there's always systems in place to coordinate the business things, somewhere to take notes and all this stuff. And so what I find is like for service-based or product-based businesses where the core product relies on a website, um, I would say that that's maybe 5 to 10% of the technical systems of a business. Um, and when we're talking like a SaaS product where the real meaty part of the business where all the sales and everything is funneled into, I'd say that's still only about 20% of the technical footprint of a business because there is things like, accounting management software and HR, the HR side of things when you're getting to bigger teams and even just like Slack or Teams or communication software. Um, it's hard to talk generally without using specific products, but um, the idea of using tech to support your business, it's not really like an add-on anymore, especially for remote like businesses where two people exist outside of the physical office.
Right.
You need that tech to support that. And so, yeah, I find that lots of businesses I work with, they're like, oh, well, we don't have anyone that can do this. And it's like, but what if we contracted someone? I know someone, they live 3 hours away, but they could jump on a Zoom call once a week and kind of guide you through the accounting side or whatever it is. And so I'd like to say that I'm also helping create modern businesses or helping like paper-based businesses move to the digital side. So it's a lot more than just building a website. But building a website is a really, really good hook to get in and see what's going on. How efficient is the business? Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that because I just recently worked with a client that had a website that was, I want to say 20 maybe 23 years old now or something like that. Very, very
Okay.
old, like version of Joomla. Um,
Hmm.
very, very limited in what they could do. And it took me years to get in there and into like work with them. And eventually I convinced them, I was like, hey, because they kept approaching me and, it was kind of like, hey, do you
Okay.
want to do this for me? And I'm like, yeah. And then we couldn't agree on either price or method or, whatever, all the business stuff.
Hmm.
And eventually they said, okay, we'll work with you. So I went in and I started doing stuff for them. And now they're just a consistent part of my business because they've started
Yeah.
realizing, like the one guy even called me and he said, our calls to our front desk are down something like 80% when there's an event because no one's calling to see when the event is, where it is, what time, all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, because nobody wants to call you. Everyone just wants to go to your website/events and like just something as simple as that. And so now they're really expanding where I think they've realized like, whoa, just the website itself for the time being, this is a powerful, powerful tool. So now almost every month they're asking me for, hey, can we like, not just do events, but can we like actually process payments? Can we do this? Can we do that? And it's like, yeah, like this is, you're being introduced, to the digital age effectively, even though you were there, you just
Hmm.
kind of had a few pages with some text and like maybe I think like they have some legal stuff they have to display. So they had that, but they weren't
Yeah.
really using their website. They just sort of like had to have it. And that's like that's a
Yeah.
crazy
Right.
thing to guide someone through. And it's really awesome. Like seeing somebody be like, whoa, like this stuff is powerful, powerful. And I'm like, yeah. And we're just on the website phase. Like there's nothing else that we've set up for you or helped you with yet.
Yeah, just wait till we, peel back the curtain a little bit on your social media and how you'll get all this engagement and all sorts of leads from like free content, essentially. It's not free because you need to make content that's worthwhile looking
Right.
at and catches people's attention. But the hosting of it is free, so you can think of it as free. And if we want to get into that social media side of things, I've had to pivot from just doing websites because I started my business essentially to say, well, there's a lot of agencies I've seen that either charge a whole lot, like way more than they need to, or they deliver underwhelming products, and so customers aren't happy. And so I saw this kind of uh, this issue in the industry. And alongside my full-time work, I started my NR Dev side hustle, probably just around COVID time. And because I was also getting married at that time, so I was like working to set something up to, help out financially. And it's been a slow burn. I've been running for 5 years, and I've just signed my 20th client last week. So like it's super slow growth compared to like working for an agency where you're turning over 6 different projects a week or whatever. And the pace has been a really interesting shift. And I think I enjoy it more because I can put more effort into what my clients need, and I'm in the room talking with them rather than being told by the project manager who's been told by three levels of
Management.
translation. Yeah, management. Yeah, there you go. Um, and yeah, I think I lost my train of thought a bit, but um, I think we were talking,
Yeah, we were
yeah,
talking about
once.
you like, kind of having just started your side hustle and like
Mhm.
the pace at which you were like actually getting clients and kind of growing your
Yeah,
business.
yeah, yeah. So it's been really interesting, like a very different pace. Um, and yeah, I really like what you said about the business who wasn't using their website for anything other than like compliance. Like they needed to have it for legal reasons, and they weren't leaning into using this as like a marketing tool. And the shift, because once you use it as a marketing tool, like you realize, wow, there's a lot of other tools out there that can support this. And you're talking about processing payments, and there's, I imagine that there'll be a constant stream of work for a long time because you're essentially um, taking someone who missed the uh,
Digital boom,
the
maybe.
the digital boom. That's right. Missed the digital boom. And there's now 20, 25 years of progress in that space. And you get to like educate them starting from the ground up, which is, that's a lot to take in and a lot of potential. And that's exactly what I'm doing. And maybe it's more than 20 because, the internet's been around for longer. I'm only 30, so I don't remember a time when there was no internet, but I remember a time when the internet was only for the tech heads. Um, and so like that's exactly what I experience with all my clients pretty much. They're still writing invoices by hand, and they're still like printing stuff out and putting it in a filing cabinet and don't understand what files are on a computer. And so like I may go to a client's place to set them up a Calendly or a Stripe account, just the free tier. And it might take 3 hours because I have to teach how to log into different accounts, how to access this business email that they've set up and they've never checked. I have to teach what the computer file system is versus what the cloud is. And so there's a lot of teaching. Um, and I've been interested in doing that teaching. I've worked with a lot of like senior citizens and stuff just voluntarily. So I guess that kind of gives me enough patience to deal with these clients, whereas
Right.
some or most developers may not be able to, break down those assumptions and work through teaching things that, well, why didn't you learn that in school or whatever? Um, and so, yeah, it's been really interesting because I don't think there's a whole lot of devs out there that have the time or the ability to teach non-tech business owners at the level that I do. And when I meet devs who are like that, it's so fascinating to see how much overlap there is in our working and like the type of clients we have, and it becomes a really interesting niche. So it's like ultra non-tech dev support. I don't know what you'd call it, but that's what I do.
Well, it's because it's interesting too. Like even just something as simple as someone's WordPress setup. Like I've looked at so many people's WordPress setups where they're like, I don't know how to, update my events. I don't know how to update this,
Mhm.
update that. And then I go in there and you know how like WordPress will have, of course, there's like a million and one plugins and
Mhm.
every plugin has their own management system and, all this. And even I'm
Mhm.
a little confused as to where their events go. And so like what I try to do, because like I'm kind of the same as you, where I try to help the client through, educate them through is I like to give them like a really good UX in the CMS, whether it's Webflow, whether it's WordPress, whatever it is. It's like I go in and I'm like, okay, we're making an events post type. So when you want to add an event, you log in, you click events, and now you fill in the blank.
Yeah.
And my, limitations on the field for character limit or maybe file size, because people will commonly try to upload 4K images. It's like, no, we're not doing that for a 200 by 200
Yeah.
image, like kind of thing. And it's like, go through
Mhm.
this fill in the blank instead of going like settings, slider plugin. Now the additional settings menu, now go to the tabs. And it's like this like buried
Mhm.
experience. It's like I notice a lot of devs will, and I mean, I get it, like they're busy, but a lot of devs will set things up as quickly as possible. and then just be like, oh, like, the controls are there, the tools are there, they should be able to figure it out. But I'm like, yeah, but they don't even, a lot of these clients, they don't even like think of a settings menu. They're not there being
Yeah.
like, oh, this
Yeah.
is broken or I want this to be different. Let me open the settings and see if there's a setting there. They're just sort of
Mhm.
like, I've logged in, or maybe they're not even there yet. I've logged in. Now what?
Mhm. Yeah. And I think it grows over time as well because there's philosophies and there's design elements that we get used to, like the hamburger menu, right?
Yep.
Or the three dots. We know that clicking that, because it's essentially the ellipsis, right? Which is like more. So you click the three dots and then you see more actions. Like if you don't know that the three dots have more actions behind them, why would you click it?
Right.
Um, and so those things kind of grow over time as well. And so it's not uncommon for me to work with my clients and have a notepad and pen and like write down the steps for how to open up the digital document that tells them how to go to their system.
Right.
Like, our password manager, I set up a password manager for one of my clients who they are two ladies in their 70s, and they've come out of retirement because they want to start an e-commerce business.
Oh, wow.
And so
Okay.
I'm working with them with the free tier of Stripe, the free tier of Calendly, because they want to do like in-person appointments as well, and the free tier of Linktree. And basically, we set up the products in Stripe, and then we've got Linktree, which has the product links to it, and then we stick that on the Facebook page. And it's taken maybe 6 hours to set all that up, but like most of the time, it's making sure that the passwords are written down in the right book, and when they come to visit or when I visit them, that they brought that book because we need that to log in. And so, like, I've got backups of all their passwords in my digital password manager, and like I'm juggling their paper systems and processes with my digital knowledge. And at some point, we'll be migrating from paper to digital, but there's a body of work that goes into that. Whereas I think a lot of techs kind of overlook the body of work that goes into it because it's like, oh yeah, just quickly add a password entry and stick it in and you're done.
Right. Uh, how far will you go? Like, you've described like you go in and try to, kind of go all the way to the paper, try to bring them digital, maybe even brand
Yeah.
identity stuff, design stuff. How far will you go? Because like before the show, we were just discussing briefly, and I'll just share like a real brief personal story that you've already heard, but it's like we were contacted by a charity really early in our business years and years ago, well before this podcast, and they were like super, super newbies. It was like friends that were running some charity events for like a good cause. They didn't really think of the legal stuff. And they asked me, we were setting up, or figuring out what they wanted on their website, and had determined that we were going to manage everything because they did not know how to do that. And no big deal. You send me the pictures, I'll deal with it. You send me the blog posts, I'll just copy paste, no big deal kind of thing. And then the conversation switched to, hey, like, do you understand the financial and accounting processes and laws for a not-for-profit here in Canada? And I was like, no, I do not. Right? There's the line. It's like, I'm not giving financial advice and certainly not tax advice, because like I don't even
Mhm.
do my own taxes at this point. So like, where's
Yeah.
where's your line if you have one? Like, do you eventually just go like, hey, we can't do that, or maybe you refer them to someone else or something?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Because if you don't have a line, you spread yourself too thin.
Yeah.
You just can't do everything. There's a finite amount of time in the day and a finite amount of ability for me to understand concepts, right? I might think that I'm pretty clever and can understand a lot of things, but that doesn't mean I can understand everything. Um, there is a temptation to say, well, AI understands everything, so maybe I could work you through that. I can say, what are
Right.
the tax laws? And you teach me, but there's risks to that. I'm not advocating for AI to be your accountant. Um, Instead, it really comes down to that network that I find. Building that network becomes super important because as soon as I have a client that requires skills that are like getting to the edge of my expertise and my knowledge instead of stretching myself to learn those things. I can say, well, I know this person who they're absolutely fantastic at it. Like these are the accountants that I've worked with. They've been really good. They've helped me, understand what things are tax deductible and what things aren't. So I'll put you onto them. And then it's more about referring, but not really doing it uh, with a goal to like not work with them anymore. Just like add this person to your resource pool
Right.
rather than like you go work with them now and I'll see you when your website needs an update again. It's more like, just get some contracted help from these people to fill that gap. And yeah, I'm a big believer in just having specialists work on the things that they're good at. Um, and I guess that's a bit ironic because I'm like probably a rather different generalist when it comes to the tech. But I would say that I still specialize in tech, right? And so I wouldn't be helping someone with their accounting. Like I'd say that the line is the tech. When we move from tech requirements to other things in the business, that's where I say, I can help you come up with some plans or some wording that will help you find someone who can help with this, but like I'm not able to help you with that. Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense, especially because I was gonna say like when stakes are high, like it's like when stakes are
Mm.
high with tech stuff, like you'd be able to at the very least like figure that out. But when stakes are high, like if the government calls you and it's like, hey, we're doing an audit and we need these 8 forms that you've never heard of filled out for
Yeah.
tomorrow, it's like stakes are too high now. Like I can't just figure that out. I can't like weasel my way through that. It's gonna be a big old phone call to some sort of finance firm or something,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Definitely. And I think it really comes down to scale, right? If you're working with a business that's turning over 2 million a month, which is one of my clients, but that's a different story. They're running a Magento site, enterprise e-commerce, and I single-handedly maintain their site, which is really, really fun. Because professionally, before I started my side hustle, my expertise was Magento. So
Okay.
that enterprise e-commerce. So the reason I'm able to support these smaller clients with good tech decisions is because I've worked at the top end doing like massive multi-international, 7 or 8 different regions of servers and infrastructure, all running Magento websites. And then I take that expertise and like shrink it down to like a tiny portion of what's required and say, well, maybe we don't need a Magento store because you've got 6 products. We'll set you up a WooCommerce site, or if you want to do it yourself, we'll set you up a Shopify store. And so um, I really like being able to know about the large scale things and then helping my clients navigate what of those things they need and not paying for anything more than they need. So um, yeah, that's that's my expertise and that's how I support my clients.
How do you manage, like, I don't know what way you'd call it, not downgrading them, but putting them, taking them back down to earth, I guess is the better way to say it, where it's like they have,
Mm.
even if it's just Shopify, they have like the top end account, blah, 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 whatever. But it's like, they're selling like straws and that's all they sell. It's like one product comes with 4 colors, whatever. And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa here. Like, we might be able to get away with either the first, and the cheapest paid tier or even cheaper, maybe even the free tier, depending on,
Mhm. Mhm.
jurisdiction, whatever, and whatever Shopify offers for you. And it's like, because I always have this issue with clients where a lot of them think that and like some of them have told me this. They're like, are you being lazy? Like, you don't want to manage this? And I'm like, actually, I kind of don't think you want me to manage this because like I'm going to be spending, 4 hours a week, 2 hours a week, whatever it is, dealing with I mean, directly, I have a client who was roped in by another agency to just get this huge enterprise, like super complex CRM setup, just crazy, like integrated with their website, all the fixins. And
Mhm.
then I found out they had one marketing person. And I was like, do you even like log into the CRM? Because when I went in there, everything was like still like, the sample, like here's a sample order, here's a sample,
Yeah, yeah.
whatever, and all that. And they're like, no, like we don't use any of that. And I was like, well, the licensing fee for this is a couple thousand a month.
Why are
So
you
like,
paying for it?
yeah, why are you paying for it? So like in that particular case, I was able to convince them quite easily. But sometimes you'll walk in on where someone doesn't, maybe the licensing fees less, or they've just like slightly grown too much. And then I try to draw them down, and they're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, you're kind of being lazy, like you're trying to cut our stuff down." And I always struggle with that relationship where I'm like, "No, like trust me, man. Like you want to be kind of like a tech minimalist, because if you're not a tech company, you don't understand like how some of this stuff can get out of control. Because it's like if you want one small thing done to this CRM, sure, maybe it's a plug and away, a $300 plug and away though. It's not
Mhm.
something that is so easy to use, let alone get trained on and then pay consistently for the subscription, the license, and all that.
Mhm. And then there's maintenance. Maybe you've set up something that's self-hosted, and suddenly you have to make sure that the environment that the system is on is maintained. And someone's just told you, WP engine will take care of it all. And then, well, someone else convinced us to migrate to this other hosting platform. And so we did that, but now we can't connect to Stripe because no one's Stripe says our site's too insecure. They don't support it because we're on such an old version of WordPress, and there's totally experiences like that. And I have had to do migrations that are like downsizing from, like, we've got this platform that's huge and you're spending a whole bunch of money. And it all comes down to like a cost benefit analysis, right? So in talking with business owners, I say, look, this is how much you're paying, and here's how much it would cost to move it to just spreadsheets. Let's say you're only doing 100 clients and you can manage that with spreadsheets pretty, well, 100 might be a bit much, but let's say you've got 10 clients and that's keeping you floating. So you don't need any of this stuff. We'll do a migration. I'll export it, because a migration to downsize is really just exporting to a CSV, right? And then from that CSV, we can either import it into something smaller, or you could just manage that CSV for a little bit until you grow. And so, yeah, there's definitely times where it's like, we need to downsize here. And I think the solution that I've found is having my pricing represent the amount of effort that goes into the different systems. So if it's a WordPress site, but they don't need any sort of automations connected to it, I'll do that for 1500. And so it's like, well, 1500 for a website, and that includes having a business email, that includes understanding how to log in, blah, 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 blah. But as soon as you need automation, then it's like, we'll jump to 3000 because we don't know the complexity. We don't know what systems we're going to automate, all that. And then I basically say 5,000 is the starting point for e-commerce. And like, we'll talk. We'll
Right,
we'll
right.
work out your requirements, and each new thing becomes an add-on. And I think it works well to set those expectations, because suddenly it's, oh, you want a low-code website that you don't have to change ever. Like, I can do that for 500, no worries. But if if there's systems in the back end of your business, which there always is, um, spoiler alert, there always is, um, then we'll set something up that has a back end, and I'll teach you how to use that. And then
Right.
I'll support you along that journey. And it will look like finding the right plugins, working out maybe 3 or 4 plugins that do the same thing. Say, here's the price, here's the pros, here's the cons. Where do you want to go? So it's more about tech guidance rather than doing it myself. And it was a really bitter pill to swallow at the beginning, because the reason I started this thing was because I wanted to write clean code and fix the world of plugins and things. But what I noticed is small business can't afford clean code, and enterprise businesses don't care about clean code because our website's just one of 18 revenue streams. If we build something bespoke, then we have to maintain it. We have to have some employee at least part-time come in and make sure everything's good. So pulling something off the shelf is the best return on investment. And so the only place where clean code matters seems to be like medium business where it's like we can justify having developers that know how to architect code cleanly and actually write code cleanly. And it usually looks like a rebuild from small business to medium business or a migration from something smaller to something medium sized. And so, yeah, I learned very quickly I'm probably not going to be writing a lot of code when I'm supporting these clients. And it's unfortunate because I'm a developer at heart. And so like I want to write code. And so when it's like, oh, we have this plugin, but it's not quite doing the thing, it's like, yes, okay, cool. Well, I'll customize it and then I fire up my IDE that I haven't opened for ages because I've been, just in the world of admin panels and config and the business side. But the development side is what I enjoy, what my passion is.
It's really interesting you say that because like I mentioned this all the time on the show that like I do the medium to small business clients, the listeners
Mhm.
have heard this a million times, and like I don't do a lot of code. And the reason
Yeah.
is because like if you have, a one marketing employee or like two people that work on your website or something, maybe like one marketer and like one content creator or something, which also just so happens to be like just a guy in your company that likes to take pictures. Like, it's not
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
like a content creator as a position. It's like they're just like, where do I upload my photos? They're not like, hey, like I noticed that the uploads like were 0.2 seconds a bit too long that time. It's like they're just like, no, I just want to upload,
Hmm.
let's get going. And or their marketers or other staff are trained on something like WordPress, and they will like have a phone call with you where they're like, I want WordPress, I want Elementor, like right away.
Hmm.
And they don't even know what that means. Like the person on the phone is
Yeah.
usually someone different than the people that are going to be using it, but they're like, my
Yeah.
marketing team says they're trained on these, and like, do not, don't use Beaver Page Builder, don't use a
Hmm.
custom theme,
Hmm.
use these tools off the shelf. And it's like, yeah. And a lot of devs, I know some purists will say like, hey, like, everything should be custom coded, this and that. And it's like, well, you are
Hmm.
reinventing the wheel too often. And there's a reason
Yeah.
why these solutions do exist. And we become, if you do agency stuff, of which we're a small agency, but you become a solutions architect, which is like really what we're discussing here today, is like you become a
Hmm.
tech solution architect. You're not just that person that like every day opens up the IDE, does their ticket, puts in a pull request, fixes bugs in the GitHub repo, whatever. It's like, no, like you are a solutions architect. And one of the issues you may run into is, they hired someone that does not know how to log into email.
Hmm.
Like, and then
That's
you're doing
true.
a bit of
Yep.
IT there, and that could be the whole day where they're like, I just don't get it.
Hmm. Yep. When I look at it, it looks like this, but when someone else looks at it, they see something else. And what's happening? Why is it different on mine?
Yeah.
Yep. Time to teach you about admin panels. Okay, cool. Um, yeah, I think you've made a good point. And one topic that I like in this podcast when you talk about do you go with the bleeding edge tech or do you go with the tried and tested solutions? And I mean, small business can't afford the risk of bleeding edge tech. And so, and at the other end of the spectrum, enterprise can't afford the maintenance or the effort of bleeding edge tech. And so everything kind of converges into the bleeding edge and the fun dev and building things is in the medium where people can afford it, but it's not quite the there's no other streams, there's no other thing happening with the business where the core business is the website and nothing else. That's when you can be innovative and try new things. And so it's really interesting from an economic point of view to see, like, if you want to get into interesting development, like doing VR and like Web3 stuff. Like you're either going to have to luck out and find a startup who's heard about it and interested and has some sort of money, or skip the early stage and find someone in medium who's built something, they've ensured that it's working, they've found an audience, people are paying, and now they can afford like a rebuild or an expansion. Uh, yeah.
That makes total sense too, because I mean, just in terms of optics, I mean, depending on how large those large businesses are, if they have a major outage because they're on the bleeding edge and something goes down big time, I mean, down big time could mean literal headlines. Like, people are like, I can't log into my financial software and they service 2 million customers. It's like, oh, this ain't good. And if you're like, especially like I think you're a solopreneur and like I'm like with Mike, so like we're a partnership. It's kind of like I can't handle getting that email.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't want to
Yeah.
be the one to fix that login system.
Hmm. That's right. There's a lot of risk and there's a lot of responsibility and accountability that comes with taking on those clients where you are coming up with new things that haven't been tried and tested, right? You're on that bleeding edge. And as you say, for the smaller, less resource heavy companies, that is serious risk because how do I service my other clients if something was to go down? That's something to think about and consider and stick in the brain of, all the different things that you have to think about when running a business. And so, yeah, even my business, which is like solely, well, the seed of starting a business, that idea was write clean code for small Aussies and like really support the mum and dad shops. Like if they need digital expansion, you have the tech to do that. So just support them. And then like maybe after my second client, I was like, I didn't write any code for either of those people. Like
Right? Yeah.
I've set up a WordPress site and I've configured the copy and used the images they gave me, but like no code. And so I'm definitely seeing the shift for businesses to go to those no-code solutions because it makes sense, like from a market perspective. And developers like me don't like those things because why is it limiting me? It's constraints, but I actually enjoy the puzzle of working through those constraints and saying, I know that the end goal is here and I've done it hundreds of times, but without a budget, how do you get there?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been really, really interesting.
There are definitely like solutions that you architect, for people that are on smaller budgets. Like I mentioned on this show that I generated a Google News sitemap for the first time for some people. I knew what it was. It's just like I've never done the Google News sitemap, and I like generated it because the guy was like, we can't put the sitemap on my hosting. So it's like, all right, there's a big X, and it's like, and I want to do this for short of my fee for free. And so it's like,
Mhm.
oh, like, this isn't just, you could have just, I could have either, custom coded it up, or I could have just went to Make or like Zapier and just been like, hey, we'll sign up for the first paid tier. We'll set this up so it pulls from your RSS feed or whatever it is, right? And we'll just generate this file and, who cares? But instead it's like, okay, well, now we have to kind of mess with some GitHub pages and GitHub actions and like a little bit of custom code and what can we do with this? And it's like, I haven't, done this in a while, or I haven't really touched Node.js too much. So it's like, okay, let's figure out how to do this. And it's pretty interesting, like how you can like architect solutions like that. Even if you're not like coding the whole time, like this solution ended up being like a fair bit of coding, but it was a fair bit of service searching as well. Like finding out like, oh yeah, okay, this can do this daily. No problem. I won't hit any limits. Okay. I don't need another domain because that would cost, that wasn't in the budget. So it's like, okay, like it's really interesting, trying stuff out. And I feel like devs, like some devs who are like the purist devs would actually like working sometimes with no code tools because like what you said, like the angle and there's all these pieces of the puzzle which are these no code tools, plugins, etc. on the table, how do we get them all to line up and still respect that business end, the financial end, or that person's been trained in this software end.
Yeah, yeah. And it's even things like, well, their website's hosted on a hosting provider, so maybe we could whip up some sort of cron job and stick it in the background on that service rather than paying for this SaaS tool that does the same thing. Um, and so yeah, there's kind of this. I spend time with like self-hosted open source SaaS solutions. So rather than SaaS, actually, it's self-hosted open source, and so like FOSS, right? Free open source software. Um, I spend lots of time with that because the functionality, although it may not be like bleeding edge, reactive, responsive, even, um, some of those tools can work on existing servers, and then maybe it's just a customization to something like that rather than paying the subscription. And so yeah, there's definitely pros and cons to both, because as soon as you have a service that your business relies on, that needs to be maintained, because PHP or Node versions continue to go up, and you get sunsets of older versions and you have to update things. So like I'd be interested to hear about the code that you wrote for that the sitemap generation. Like, have you got to the point where you need all that code in a repository because there's been one or two more versions and there's been tweaks to it, or have you set it and forgot about it? Like you don't need to modify it at all.
I've mostly said it and forgot it.
Yep.
To be honest, I
Cool.
use ChatGPT, a lot to help me
Yep.
with it
Hmm.
because like I hadn't really touched Node, and it uses the Webflow API because he's on Webflow, which is why we
Hmm.
couldn't host the sitemap just like direct on there. There's ways to do it. It's kind of hacky, and like I didn't want to
Yeah.
get into that because it's like, hey, now we're opening up like an API where it's like or an API key where it's like, hey, like someone could upload. And I was like, hey, like if we're using free services, I don't want to be like, allowing someone to potentially hijack and start uploading junk into your Webflow account. You potentially get
Mhm.
banned or something. Like, who knows what could happen? So I was like,
Yep.
let's just do like, read only. The stuff we're reading is public anyway. So if someone's like, aha, I've got it. It's like, yeah, you did. You could have just went to their website.
Yeah. Good
you know?
job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I've just said it and forgot it. Like I know that like if Webflow changes their API again, because this is version 2, I believe, like obviously I'll have to like update it then or something like that. But yeah, that's kind of where that's at, to be honest.
Yep. Yep. Fair enough. And so the next kind of body of work that you foresee in that project is when the Webflow API changes its public API, right? You'd have to do something, and hopefully there's no breaking changes, but who trusts who trusts Semver these days?
Yeah.
Um, things change. They're not supposed to have breaking changes, but they do.
Yeah.
Um, the reality is they do. Um, and so I think you touched on a really good point, which is very topical at the moment. You use ChatGPT to make this sitemap software. Um, and maybe you don't look at it like you built software because it was just a little bit of coding, right? You just kind of stitched two things together. But that's really what software is, right? We stitch 100,000 things together. It's the same idea, just at a smaller scale. And so I've actually had an experience lately where my local mechanic has been using ChatGPT and vibe coded himself a CRM. Now, the fact that he didn't just find an existing CRM and like just, put in the information that he needs and connect a calendar to it, that's a knowledge thing. But what he's built with the CRM, in his words, he's built 95 to 98% of the CRM. And now he's reaching the limits of the ChatGPT context because it's all in one file. And there's a lot of different routes and all sorts of different things. So um, he he worked. he gets his hair cut at the same barber as me, and I spend a lot of time with my barber because he's done business for years and years. So when I get my hair cut, we just chat business the entire time. And so I said, look, if anyone you know needs technical help, um, like let me know because I can help them. If it's software, I can help them personally. If it's like hardware or firmware or support, I have people in my network that I can get you in touch with. So I like to position myself as this like one point of contact. If you need tech help, come to me, and then I'll kind of behind the scenes or directly tell you this person can help you. Yeah. So before we get into the vibe coded project itself, did you have any other questions around like how that came to be?
I mean, I'm kind of curious, like how, because like this is the first time I've really heard of this, where like a client has
Mhm,
taken it on themselves so far. Like I know most of my
mhm,
clients would be very much like, hey, I'm starting, even though it's ChatGPT, like I'm starting to touch, tech. Like it's outputting code and it's telling me to put
mhm,
things into files and things here and there, and they would be like, okay, I need help. I'm going to call Matt.
mhm.
And so I'm kind of
Yeah.
curious, like, I guess just how, I don't know whether like how much you've discussed it with the guy, but like, is he always been like this? Is he always like, kind of a go getter is kind of how I would describe him, not like, because I don't know him. Like, is this,
Yeah.
and this is a first for you as well, I think, right?
It is. But it's super interesting because I've been watching LinkedIn's become my social media of relaxation, which is ridiculous. But like my leisure social media, I go there to doom scroll instead of Facebook or Instagram. And I've seen a whole bunch of things in LinkedIn where it's like, and I think LinkedIn's just got posts about Twitter. All social media is just regurgitating each other, but it's talking about some dude who's vibe coded something and he's put it out there. And then someone's like, we found your open API, open AI access, API key, and like we've run up your bill and all sorts of things. And I was like, yeah, this vibe coding stuff is awesome for like proof of concept and getting ideas into the hands of developers, um, or getting ideas into the hands of non-developers to then take to developers. But if people are trying to bypass the developers, then there's security, there's scalability, and there's performance that people aren't going to be thinking about. Why would they? Like
Right.
you're not going to prompt Chat GPT and say, please tell me the security implications of doing this and this and this, and think about it and solve it. Like maybe that's a feature we can give a feature request we give to Lovable and Bolt and all these vibe code tools. Um, but when I saw that and there's a joke that it's like vibe coded, you mean vulnerability as a service? Um, I thought that was pretty spot on. When I saw that, I was like, maybe one of the services I can offer is like vibe coding security or like take a almost production ready vibe coded app and make it production ready. There's a body of work there. So I actually hopped onto Lovable and Bolt and like prompted a website to build a landing page for this. And so I was in the process. I haven't made it public yet because my entire marketing and advertising has been word of mouth and referrals. And so my online presence is virtually non-existent. I have a Facebook page and we'll talk about that later. But so I have this website in mind where I want to have like a couple vibe code landing pages and like graphically I was going to have it like on an assembly line and it like goes through my business and becomes this shiny production ready thing. So it's like vibe coded slop to
Right.
production ready code. So I had this idea. I was like, I could support this and maybe, I manifested it or whatever. It like maybe a month later, I get this call from the mechanic. He's like, hey, so I've been using ChatGPT and I've built 95%, 95 to 98% of my CRM. And I spoke to my barber and he says, you're a developer. And like, I'm well aware that building a CRM from scratch would be like 20 to 30K. But I've built most of the work. So like, can we work together for less than that? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Like I'd be super interested to take on that project and I'll do it for way less than that. And work out what has to happen to build a vibe coded app, or I'm coining the term undeploy. Undeploying the app because normally we go idea to developers to the deployment to get it to production. And here we're going idea, production, and then we undeploy it to get it to development, right? So there's this undeployment step. And so yeah, I've basically been working through on a experimental basis his application and working out what needs to happen to turn it from a single node only works on his laptop when he's running the service to I've got a few stages, a few milestones that we're working towards, but the end result is to make it a SaaS platform that we're selling licenses to. So it's super interesting to take that journey in the reverse, the reverse beginning. And so yeah, that's what I've been doing. If you want to know like the steps that I've identified in undeploying an app, there's some interesting stuff. We can go into detail about that. Is
I'd
that
love
what
that.
you
Yeah,
want?
yeah, that'd
Yeah.
be cool. Yeah, for sure.
So I do have a list. So um, the first step is to acquire the code base, right? So um, in my case, it was he just zipped it up and sent it to me. So he was computer literate enough to compress a bunch of files, compress a folder, and get it to me. So that worked well. We did have issues where sending code over Gmail was blocked by the spam filter and like
Hmm.
virus checking because it's like it's code. Why aren't you using GitHub?
Yeah.
And so we worked through that by just using a shared folder. And so he sent me a link to the shared folder and we were all good. And then the second step is I perform a security audit. So I essentially just open up the code and work out what's good with it, what's bad with it. And then what I do is I set up project management because that's not there. And so I document like features that have been built, not in detail, just to kind of get a sense of the context and what's already happened. And then I work out like a little bit of a roadmap, like maybe 3, 4 months worth of roadmap ideas and things, and document like long-term dream so that we can uh, we know the trajectory of the roadmap, what we're trying to get to, right? And in my full-time work, I'm currently a tech lead for a startup, and so that kind of the the high level, medium term, and immediate goal thinking and planning and strategizing is at the top of my mind at the moment anyway. So like the first thing I did after the security audit is set up project management. Um, and then I even started doing some technical documentation. How is it running locally? How do we want it to run in staging? Is there a staging? No, not yet, but how will we set that up? And then the next step from that is to build a local dev environment. So it's such a weird flow. And so I'm using Docker. And the interesting thing is this vibe coded app is a Python Flask app, and I've
Okay.
never done Python. So, so you've got this PHP developer that knows tech, understands, logical constructs and all sorts of things. And I'm able to work on this Python thing because I can use my local AI to explain syntax and say, well, what the heck is the Pythonism of this thing? Or is this an inbuilt function? Should this work? And all that stuff. Or I could use Google if I wanted to, try to not jump on the bandwagon of AI, which, it's not worth trying to fight that. Um, the momentum is way too much to stop that train.
For sure.
Um, and so
That's
once I've got a low, yep,
no, I
you
was
go.
gonna say this is super interesting. Like it's almost like half backwards a little bit, you know.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Um, Once I've got a local dev environment, then I undeploy the vibe coders environment. So what that means is I'm extracting API keys that are hard coded in the app. I'm removing usernames and passwords to email servers and whatever else I find in the source code. And the idea is to make it public Gitable, whether we actually stick it on Git and make it open source and other people can add to it or not, that's neither here nor there. But from a security standpoint, the goal is to have me and Vibe Coder work on this app in parallel rather than like me just taking it over or me just telling him what prompts to use. And so, yeah, once I've undeployed the app and I've got like an .env file and things are separated, then stick it on Git and connect it with my vibe coding mechanic. So I go over to his place, teach him how to get Git installed and get him set up on either like VS Code free if he doesn't want to do the AI side of things. Well, I mean, of course he does, right? And so I spoke to him about Cursor and Claude and Windsurf um and his eyes like lit up. He's like, I can build stuff directly in here from AI. I don't need to copy and paste from ChatGPT. So there's like a huge level of like potential and things that come from that. And there's pros and cons to vibe coders knowing about those things. So tread carefully. Um, Actually, I guess we could go into that. One is now while trying to move this project forward, he's got three other projects that he's started.
Oh wow,
And
okay.
so he's like, I had this idea for this and this. And instead of just having an idea and like talking with the developer about feasibility and bandwidth and stuff, it's like, I'm doing it. And so I'm like, okay, do you want me to do an audit on that and like set up project management for that? And like, all the effort that goes into like supporting this vibe code app? And he's like, no, I think I'll do this one on my own. And it's like, okay, cool. Well, once it's at the point where it's too big, come to me and we'll sort it out. But I think my entire career has kind of led me to the point where I have the skills and the patience and the ability to manage and undeploy these vibe coded apps. So I'm really glad to be in this space and to have all that information behind me to back it up. Um, the next step, once it's on Git, is to work out a deployment. And so that could be finding some public hosting and setting up a domain. Uh, the listeners know what deployment means and what a public website is. Um, but yeah, doing a redeployment of their app because they had it somewhere and now they have it somewhere else. In this case, we went with Python Anywhere, which is a Python hosting platform, and you manage the files, and they take care of all the virtual environment stuff that has to happen to get a Python app running on production. And so that was a really smooth process, actually, which is great. Um, and then once you've got deployment, the next thing is database migration, where you've got to either get the data that the vibe coder was using and then like anonymize it so that you can use it as demo data or whatever, because my vibe coder, like he has been using this for his business. So there's like client details and stuff in the database, and you don't want that to be in the demos or in the production data, like if it was in a repository or whatever. So there's a body of work in like undeploying or reverse engineering a database migration, which I've really enjoyed. Then from there, um, we can talk about custom feature development. So we can set up a staging environment and start building features. And he can build features with ChatGPT, and I can build features with ChatGPT, and I can build seven features with ChatGPT in the same time. And but the problem that we have with AI assisted development at the moment, I think, is human bandwidth to review and like ensure that this thing should be built. Because the question used to be, is it worth the time and effort to build this? And that question's no longer relevant because, you can get an AI assisted development project done in an hour that would have taken 3 months. Um, and so now the question turns to, should we be building this? Do our customers want it? So there's a lot more effort in the product and the market validation side of things. But um, once we do custom feature development, the next thing is scale. We talk about how do we get other people using this software because it is software. It doesn't have a logo, it doesn't have any nice UX, but like it works.
Yeah.
It's bare bones. It's bare bones. And like what he showed me, like it doesn't have CSS, and it's like, I mean, when I say that, it's like white background, black text website from the 80s, but like it's solving his problem, and he thinks it's the best thing ever. He's never seen a CRM, so he doesn't know that there's more things that it could be doing, and it's slowly introducing him to CRMs, and we're looking at some open source CRMs that might be able to do a lot of the work. But then there's concerns like if we haven't built it, how do we know it's secure and stuff like that? And it's like, well, the vibe code one's not secure either, but
Right.
that's what I'd have to do. I have to um, secure things. The question is, should I spend time doing that, or should we find something off the shelf? And there's a discussion there, but we've we've got so much more like tangible things to look at and to work with to understand what he's trying to achieve and to build on that. Um, and so yeah, that's the underplaying a vibe coded app. I think I'll write a blog or do some sort of piece about this, um, or hop on a podcast and talk about it, maybe.
Yeah, there you go. That's incredible though. Like that's super cool. It sounds like he's just like super into it as well. Like from what you've said too, which is awesome. Like I've
Mhm.
never,
Mhm.
I mean, short of like being hired as like, yo, you're temporary help on a dev team kind of thing. I've never really
Yeah.
like worked alongside a client like that,
Mhm.
which that's super interesting that he's just like no, I got these other projects. Don't worry about it. It's like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
It is because some of the projects he's working on are like things that this CRM's going to integrate with. Like he's building a VoIP customer messenger
Wow.
thing that's gonna like take customer requests and record them as pending jobs, and like he's really gung ho and working stuff out. And like he sent me the code and I started like underplaying it and performing a security audit, and then I was like, hang on, we haven't talked about me doing this. There's no sort of discussion on price or like whether you want to pay for this. And so I brought it up and I said, look, I only have the bandwidth to undeploy one thing at a time. Sorry, I'm only human. Um, he's like, oh, yeah, no, that's fair enough. Yeah, I'll take care of the VoIP thing. You just do the CRM. And it's like, okay, cool, cool.
Cool.
And at some point, we'll talk about an integration between the two, I'm sure. But that's the cool thing about software. Like you can start small and you don't need to have all the pieces working together smoothly at the beginning because it's a software developer's job to make those systems talk to each other. So whether they were built to talk to each other at the beginning or whether we have to extend them to make them talkable with one another, like that's our job. And so yeah, I'm happy for him to set up a single service VoIP client and connect it in later.
How far are you along in the undeployment of the CRM? Because you already mentioned that you would work with that like Python hosting company. Like, have you
Mhm.
undeployed it fully now? You think, or
It's
like,
it's in production. Yep.
oh, nice, okay,
Yep. There's no authentication layer built, so we don't want to like tell everyone about it and have people find it and flood it with a bunch of data or steal client data. So like it's in obscurity. It's deployed in production in obscurity. So it exists and he's using it. Um, and the very next feature that I'm working on is the authentication layer because once we have authentication, then we can start saying give a license to someone else and they won't see your data, you won't see theirs, and there becomes that distinction. Um, and there's been two caveats that have been pretty interesting during this undeployment that I think would apply in any undeployment. And so one is vibe coders may have access to the hosting, which means it's very easy for things to get messed up. Um, and so you need backups and you need restoration. You need some sort of backup and some sort of restoration of like server hosting config stuff that you think no one would ever touch because you're working with someone who touches the things but doesn't know what the things do. And
Right.
so um, yeah, it's that's been pretty interesting. And then the demo data versus prod data and managing that can be tricky because you've got to anonymize the demo data and the prod data obviously has to be accurate. So yeah, that's well, actually that's one of the two caveats. The other one is the requirements. So like dependencies, the things that build the app. The requirements document, like your package JSON, or in this case, the requirements TXT that Python pip uses, or composer JSON if we move to my PHP world. This sort of package management may not exist, and so your environment hasn't got the dependencies that the app relies on. Um, and I mean, uh, depending on what project I guess you're working on, because there's usually a lock file that has a state of those dependencies, but in Python there wasn't one. And the database file might not exist either. So if the database file or there's no MySQL dump or anything. Like you have to reverse engineer what the database looks like by looking at the code to work out the schema to populate it with some demo data or some dummy data, right? It doesn't even need to be demo data. There's a difference. But yeah, it's been really interesting.
That's super, super cool. And like you absolutely wouldn't think of all those things like the lack of SQL or whatever, because like I've done it for
Mhm.
school a couple times where I've just used like a random XML file they use just to because we were just learning like HTML, CSS. So it's sort of like, hey,
Mhm.
like do this and this, and then the next step was like, hey, use some JavaScript and like pull that data in, quote unquote, but it's just random XML file or whatever.
Mhm.
And it's like, I mean, a vibe coded thing could just do that, or could just generate like some random XML or like a TXT, like who knows?
This one generated a SQLite file. So there's an SQLite database sitting in the repository, and there's six or seven like backups of it. So ChatGPT has been like backing up the files, and no, ChatGPT can't back up the files. So my mechanic guy must have like made backups of the file when he knew things were going to change. So he's pretty clued on. Like I've always made the joke that modern cars, like being a mechanic in the modern world, you need a computer engineering degree, and it seems like those worlds are pretty close because it turns out mechanics on modern cars can via code an app.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, that's thanks for sharing that story. That's really really cool. Like, I think the users will get a
Yeah.
kick out of that, and I mean, I certainly did. Like, that's super fascinating. Like, it's
Hmm.
something I would
Hmm.
never ever think like that I would end up doing with someone is like vibe code alongside them. But like, you're right. Like, there might just be, and clearly you found one at least, but like, there might just be that body of work or that volume of work there where like
Hmm.
that's one of the jobs that AI is like hey, it's taking jobs over here, but it's like yeah, but AI is making jobs over there, right? Kind of thing.
That's
So
right. Yep. Yep. There's a lot of talk about like it's okay, developers don't don't change industry because all the businesses that are starting with just AI slop, they're going to need developers to come in and clean it up. And it's like, yeah, that's true. But like we can do that now with the businesses that recognize the need for a developer but want to do things themselves. There's a market for it. And if there's one, there's more, right? And so I'm definitely interested in finding more vibe code undeployment projects. Um, and in fact, I'm in like an Australian small business Facebook group, and someone posted this thing, and they're like, "We've made this awesome SaaS platform." So I jumped in, I created an account, I wanted to see what was happening, and during the like single sign-on flow, it's like the SSO took me to one of the Vibe Code platform servers and then back. And so I was like, oh, okay, so this was Vibe coded, was it? And so then I like pulled up Inspector and started looking uh, behind the curtain. And I like pulled up my security audit notes file that I had done the undeployment for because it's the same thing. I just haven't been paid to do this one. This is a sales undeployment security audit. And so I'm looking through it and I'm like, wow, there's some data leaks there and all this stuff. And I found that the builder, the creator of this vibe coded app, he's like created a bunch of different accounts in his app to like drum up conversation and make it look like people are using the app. And so like I've seen in the network requests, it's all like aliases of the same email. So I took that information and like CC'd all the different aliases and sent an email to this vibe coded app guy. And I'm like, hey, here's some of the information I found from your vibe coded app. Security is super important. I'm happy to undeploy your app for this much. And um, it's like, thanks for getting back to me. Like, I know security is super important, but like, I have no money. So I'd be open to discussing this further and discussing like an equity-based thing. And like I've done equity-based projects before and they're good when they're good, but they haven't been good in my experience.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, very, very rough sometimes.
So I'm excited to talk with him, and I'm hoping that I can say, well, equity is good, but like it takes time and effort to use this expertise to replace this vibe coded stuff. And here's an example of one that I've done for my mechanic, and hopefully it'll be my second undeployment. So I don't think I'd be able to do that sales pitch if I didn't have the unique blend of tech, sales, and business skills that I have. And so, yeah, I'm really interested. I'm sure there's other people out there doing a similar thing to me, but I haven't heard of them. I haven't heard of any yet. And yeah, so that's kind of my story.
That's awesome. No, that's great to hear. And I hope the listeners out there like that's just drumming up good business. You know what I mean? Like it just goes to show you, like, even though it's a small business group and you'd think they'd just talking about, small business things that are maybe like, hey, like I'm using, X inventory system. How do you get this variable to clear or something that you wouldn't need a developer for? It's more just like, hey, I don't know how to use this software. Or other business questions, of course, if it's local, but then like, you can drum up some business in there. And like, you're not only are you drumming up business in an interesting place, but you're also drumming up business in a very interesting way. So I hope the listener out there, and I mean, myself as well, is like pretty cool, pretty dang cool.
Yeah, thank you. It's a really exciting space, and I'm glad that I can kind of pioneer this approach. And I hope that there's other developers out there that do the same thing. And if there are any that want to get in contact, like I'm more than happy to expand my network and have discussions with people. Even if it's just 15 minutes, hop on a call, see where we fit in the world, in the tech world, and what our positioning is, what the differences are, and then how we can work with each other rather than against each other. I'm always interested in that sort of thing.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great time to kind of invite you to, or say thank you for joining the show. Thanks for being on this episode, and invite you to sort of take the floor. If you want to share any links, plug anything specific, it doesn't matter. Services, charities, your website, business stuff, whatever it is, the floor is yours. Please take it away.
Yeah. So I think I kind of touched on it, but my online presence is pretty lacking because I do a lot of stuff behind the scenes. And so I have a website, which is nrdev.au, and I'm always happy um, to see traffic go to that website, but there's nothing there. Like it's just it's not even a photo of me. There's just my mobile number and email address, and so on there you can find me. If you're overseas, email is probably going to be best because time zones clash and stuff. I do have a Facebook page that I'm trying to put a bit of effort into. Sorry. And the Facebook page is facebook.com/Nathaniel R. Dev.
Perfect.
And yeah, I mean, I have a personal LinkedIn that I talk with a lot of people on. I haven't linked that to my business LinkedIn yet, just mainly because I still have my full-time gig and I don't want to do a whole lot of stuff in the side hustle that clashes with that and puts job security at risk.
Of course, yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I can give you my LinkedIn.
Sure, yeah. Whatever you'd like to share publicly, either way is good. But for sure, we'll do the nrdev.au, the Facebook as well. Those links will be on the website, in the show notes on htmlallthethings.com for the listener out there. And if you want me to share that LinkedIn link, we totally can, or we can keep that separate. Does not matter. Keep that private. But yeah, either way, thank you very much for being on the show. It's very enlightening and a really great conversation. Hope you enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been really cool.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed that interview as much as we did, but it now is, unfortunately, time to end. And just sort of where I am recording this in the future, we had a bit of a production backlog. And so Nathaniel has let me know that his side gig, which has been helping clients with vibe-coded projects and other things, has actually now become his primary gig. And so if you want to give him a shout using his website or even on his Facebook page, if you want to give him some support, or ask him some questions, or maybe even hire him to do a job for you, you can go ahead and check out those options. Once again, those links will be in the show notes on htmlallthethings.com for this episode. And if you want to support episodes like this, you can do so via Patreon. You can do so with the various tiers on there. If you want to have a shout out at the end of the show, you can do so with our $3 tier, just like these fine people did. Tim from the Web Hacker on thewebhacker.com, Jason from Geek Life Radio via geekliferadio.com, Garrett Segal, Level Up Financial Planning via www.levelupfinancialplanning.com, Magnus from YesWeb via yesweb.se, Syntaxify from the HTML All the Things Discord server, and Stacy Mosler from the website swoonworthydesigns.com. And just to let you know, we are powered by Code Rabbit. Go and nab yourself some AI-powered code reviews and that free trial. Go and check out that link in the episode description or in the show notes on htmlallthethings.com. And last but not least, we'd like to give a shout out to Michael LaRocca, a contributing author on htmlallthethings.com. Michael is the author of Self-Taught the X Generation blog at selftaughttxg.com. Feel free to leave a comment or a review on the platform that you are listening to this on, and this outro will sign us off.
You've been listening to HTML All the Things Podcast. Web development, web design, and small business. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show. And we hope you appreciate that we talk to you like human beings. And we hope you had some fun. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit us up on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Patreon at HTML All the Things. And on Twitter at HTML Everything. Until next time, this is HTML All the Things, signing off.